Okay, so here we are again for another episode of the Python People podcast, the home for global technology leaders to share insights with the tech community. My name's Guy Bevington. I'm the MD of True North Recruitment Group. And this week, I'm delighted to be joined by Kamil Tylinski, Data Science Manager for Mishcon De Reya. Kamil, a warm welcome. How are you? How are you on this glorious Thursday?
Very well, thank you. Thanks for having me here. Thanks for the invitation.
Not a problem at all. Honour is all mine. And thanks again for coming. And I guess to frame the episode for today and why you and I thought it would be a good idea to sort of put our heads together and record this podcast. So obviously one of the focuses of True North as a business is specifically around the data science and AI field. And one of the things I'm always really fascinated by about the world of data science, to be honest, is the way machine learning and analytics can be applied to different sectors, different use cases that exist in different sectors, because it's just such an exciting field that the possibilities feel almost endless, really. And Mishcon De Reya, clearly a very prestigious international law firm, global law firm, and I guess law and the legal sector is an interesting one, isn't it? Because it dates back so far, and it's an industry that's steeped in real tradition and heritage. It feels like an industry where machine learning could make such a real difference in terms of really innovating the sector and providing services, I guess, that just have never really existed until the concept of AI and machine learning was more readily available. So we thought, let's get together and share a few ideas, and who better to pick the brains of than the data science manager for Mishcon De Reya, yourself. So before we delve in and sort of get into the nitty gritty, if you'd like to kindly just give us a bit of your background and a bit of your career to date to intro yourself, that'd be awesome.
Sure. So I consider myself to be a person that knows, few things in a few areas, so to speak. I always had this interest in science, and I got to say that I think encyclopedia was my favorite book when I was a kid. I used to just flick through the pages, just look for interesting topics, and learn new things. So you can imagine how excited I got when I found out about Wikipedia, and that it's updating, it's online, you can learn so many things. So what does a kid that likes encyclopedias do in their life? I figured out I'll start my education and get my master's degree in economics, to be more specific in international finance, where I specialized in econometrics, because I always liked the quantitative side of things, and I found it extremely interesting. But then at some point while doing a master's degree, I realized actually, I like professional services as well. So why don't I get another master's degree? And I got a master's degree in law, because I thought, I never intended to actually practice law, but I thought it's so interesting to know the law. And since the law surrounds us every day, and you're bound by the contract that you sign with your energy provider or as a consumer, you need to know your rights. So I thought it's just, it's obvious for me that I need to know more. So of course decided to get a degree, which has been fun and all. And then upon graduation, I decided, well, I'll probably stick to finance for now. And I went into banking, into some finance and analytics roles. And I always thought that law would be something that's it's going to move the needle and make me like a better candidate, actually. But a lot of times in finance, people don't really like when you know the law. I don't want to name any companies, but it led to some funny situations when during the interview someone just asked me about the law, and then they kind of worryingly asked if I know anything about employment law as well. That was kind of a red flag. Not that it's by any means representative of the industry, but interesting. So I've worked in Poland, in Luxembourg, then moved to the UK. I spent some time in London, and I've I sort of figure out, I mean, third time's the charm, so why don't I get another master's degree? And I kind of considered doing an MBA because I thought, well, that sort of makes sense once you have some experience. So, so I was looking at different options, but since I always had this passion for quantitative science and experience in econometrics as well, I came across this article that said that econometric methods can be used in with regard to other data sources and not just economics, not just time series. So, so I thought, well, why don't I look into data science? That was the first time I sort of came across this term. And then my girlfriend, who actually graduated from UCL, she told me about this master's program in business analytics, which is essentially about data science and how to use data science in business. And I thought, well, that kind of makes sense. I looked into it and I decided, okay, awesome, let's do it. I got lucky enough to receive a scholarship, a Mansion House scholarship from the Lord Mayor of London and Worshipful Company of International Bankers, since I had background in finance. And well, accepted the offer to study at UCL. As part of my degree, I started working on a natural language processing problem. It was around transfer learning, and I really got into it. I thought, wow, this is awesome, you can analyze text. So so I thought, well, this is interesting. Let's look at the career options. And I was lucky enough to receive an offer from Mishcon De Reya, Dr. Alistair Moore, who was creating a team of data scientists at Mishcon's. He was an amazing person and a great mentor to me. We still work together. He sort of offered me a job. And at first I was kind of skeptical because it's a law firm. So from my experience, I know quite a few lawyers, and they usually prefer abacus to a calculator, pen and paper to computer, maybe a typewriter. So it's not exactly, it's a common misconception that it's considered to be an industry which is not evolving. Well, little did I know. So Mishcon is not a typical law firm, although at its core it's focused on litigation and on advising clients on legal matters and right from corporate to private and real estate and all areas of law. But it also has other practices within its structure, such as MDR Discover, which is an e-discovery practice, which is okay, well, interesting. Then I heard about MDR Cyber, which is a cybersecurity unit within the law firm. And I thought, okay, well, there's something going on in there. I also learned about MDR Lab, which is an accelerator program for legal startups that was created by Nick West, who's a chief strategy officer at Mishcon. And it's truly like unbelievable thing that this accelerator can actually shape the environment of legal tech worldwide, actually. And people with ideas from various on various stages of development can actually spend time with lawyers and figure out the product market fit, and make sure the product is relevant, and test it as well. So with a lot of companies that actually went through the accelerator, such as Ping or Thirdford, that are now leaders in the industry. I mean, there's a lot going on, and the other interesting aspect of Mishcon was that that only recently we've launched this MDRX tech practice, which realizes the idea of compliance by design. So making sure that your solution that you're working on is actually compliant with the regulation. So it's just truly an amazing environment with everyone at every stage, ranging from throughout the whole organization, is actually interested in using and applying innovation. So I figured out, okay, well, that's an interesting space. Although again, still quite skeptical. I've realized that legal tech is actually evolving very, very quickly. and I was very happy to be working as a data scientist at Mishcon, because it's just truly an amazing environment and an amazing team where we can really impact the way legal professionals work and the way businesses run as well.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. That's a great story, and I really like the fact that you've sort of found your route into law and like say through into data science.
No, absolutely. I mean, you see the law firms are the place where they have loads of text, so it makes sense if you have interest in NLP. It really makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it does. It makes total sense, and it does seem really. I mean, I agree with you. It is one of the areas we've got a few clients in the legal space, and legal tech does seem one of those areas where, because it has been historically this very manual kind of industry, I guess, it's just absolutely ripe for disruption in use of technology and in an appropriate way. And yeah, it seems like Mishcon's approach is one, very innovative approach to legal tech, like I say, with these all these different innovation labs and compliance by design and things like that. It's really really forward thinking, pioneering stuff. So yeah, I guess on that note, I mean, talk us through your experience then of how data science can be applied to the legal sector and your time in law so far. What are some of the most interesting revelations that you feel that data science has as an impact onto the sector?
Yeah, so I mean, again, one of the common misconceptions is that that AI and data science and machine learning solutions are there to replace the lawyers. It's nothing like that. It's no one's ever imagining the world, I hope, without the lawyers. At least I wouldn't want to live in such a world. But there's definitely a lot that we can make in order to create this sort of lawyer 2.0, and in order to provide tools and solutions to lawyers to enhance the things that they can do for the clients in a better or more efficient way. So there's a lot of things related to data-driven decision making and implementing it in legal sector in the law firm, which is also applicable to all the other businesses, because essentially you want to make as informed decisions as possible, and the best way to do it is by analyzing the data that you have available. So that's one way of sort of impacting everyday operations in the legal sector, is by just looking at what's going on and helping make decisions that which you can justify with the data, rather than with just philosophy or your managerial skills. It's not important, obviously. I mean, the other part of working in the legal sector and data science is being able to translate those concepts that are very often driven by maths and by quantitative analytics to people who are not necessarily that technical, or maybe not fond of math. So communication is definitely something that is important when you apply data science, and communicating the results that you achieve, so that you can find ways to optimize the business processes within the firm. The big part of it is actually related to gathering the data. I mean, if you think about what lawyers do, actually, you would very often find them with a highlighter, right? Which means that they have some labeling capacity, so that they're actually creating some data sets. The idea here is to make sure that we can capture this data and make it available in a searchable format for further analysis. And it can relate to things related to analyzing the document, finding clauses that are problematic, or extracting some legal arguments as well, analyzing judgments, of course, not just not from the perspective of the outcome, but from the perspective of what happens throughout the legal matter, and seeing how how judgments are being created, how markets are being run, how the projects are being managed. So there's a lot of points from which you can source, and bread and butter of legal work is time reporting. So you have those very detailed information on what's going on, what are the business processes in this sector, and it's amazing to be able to essentially extract it, analyze it, and then provide it back in a different form to legal practitioners.
Yes, absolutely. And you raise a really interesting point there about how I think it's a fair conception across lots of different sectors that the rise of AI and machine learning means the death of humanity and jobs, and there is always that big ethical debate, isn't there, about which industries would actually really benefit from more AI-based decision making. But like you say, something like law raises that real big ethical, emotional question about actually, how much of that would you want to put into the fate of systems and data versus actually human input? So that's actually a very good point. But I guess the point you've made very articulately there is surely AI and machine learning is about accelerating that process for lawyers, saving them time. And I guess really, you think about any kind of lawyer that I've ever spoken to, it's about having the right information at their disposal to make the right decision. And I guess that's huge in terms of what machine learning can do, how it can categorize the right information and present the right information to people, and spot the patterns and the trends based off previous legal precedents and case histories and things like that. And that's only ever going to make a good solicitor or a good lawyer better at their job, isn't it? Having more of the right information sooner, I guess. So I can fully understand how it play a huge part in making lawyers more effective at their job. And you mentioned earlier NLP. I mean, clearly the legal world is a world steeped in documentation and huge amounts of texts for lawyers to kind of be delving through. What are you most excited about in the world of law from an NLP application perspective? How can natural language processing be applied, do you feel, in kind of the most innovative ways for the law firms?
Yeah, of course. I mean, there's abundance of text and documents available at a law firm. So when I think about natural language processing applications in law, and something that excites me most is those legal language models that are being created. We can see those, extremely large, gargantuan language models with billion of parameters being created, and their capacity for making actually their performance on a lot of tasks is just unbelievable. And I'm definitely excited on how things are going to unfold in there. Although I suppose that we're going to see more specialized language models that are focused on specific tasks, but tasks that are actually very, very difficult even now for humans. Sorry. The other things that I'm excited about are those tools for analyzing text data, and tools that are specifically created for the purpose of analyzing legal language, such as Blackstone, which was written by Dan Hoadley, and the capacity, the capabilities of such tools just help us in our everyday work. The other area that I think is extremely interesting, and not only from the point of legal sector, is the natural language understanding and how we can enhance natural language understanding. And that actually goes both ways. So one thing that's very popular is just teaching the machines to understand the language, learn more what certain words mean, but very often I think we're not able to actually extract proper meaning, but we're extracting a certain form of the language that language model has learned through statistical inference, and hence they are so good at generating text or answering certain questions. And then the other point of that is, sorry, is how we can make documents and legal text easier to understand for humans as well. So we've been working on a project with Amplify, who intends to simplify terms and conditions and legal documents of contract and make them available to make them easier to understand for human beings as well. And I still think there's a lot to be done in natural language understanding, because we, even as humans, often tend to misunderstand certain concepts between us. And so there's still a long way before machines will be able to truly understand it, but it's definitely exciting, and it's definitely the way forward, I'd say. Other thing that I think is, I mean, it's sort of related to NLP, but I think it's more related to the legal sector in that case, is the concept of creating law as a code. So perhaps it's taken a little step back when it comes to our capabilities, when it comes to analyzing text, but perhaps we could make legal clauses consumable by by machines in an easier format. So it's more structured, and it follows the principles of code. I see those solutions being very successful in taxes, for instance, in the area of tax law. So there's really a wide array of options of how things are going to evolve and how they're going to get embedded in the world of law. But it's definitely a very exciting period, given the progress of natural language processing methods and models over the past few years.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess the point you make there about the natural language understanding is a really interesting one, isn't it? Because and I was having this conversation with someone the other day about the difference between real intelligence, or in the way we kind of see sentience and intelligence, and a very high performing machine learning algorithm. The real difference to me anyways is context. Actually the real intelligence is able to understand the context of a situation, how that's applied, versus a binary black and white algorithm, which is it's either this or that. And the natural language understanding piece, I can imagine that is such a complicated challenge, such a complicated problem to build into models and systems in terms of spotting the patterns, but taking into account context of the situation as well. From a legal perspective, that must be so important to get that right. But I can imagine, like I say, if we can get it right, the value that is there would be absolutely huge.
I mean, we're getting there. Slowly and steadily, we're getting there.
I have faith. The right man in charge. But no, that's really interesting. And the other area I'm always quite interested to understand from a sector perspective is, when most industries now know that they should be doing something in AI, machine learning, data science, whether they realize what it can do or not. But it's such a buzzword, isn't it? Such an area of investment in from a technology standpoint. But I think a lot of companies are still struggling with this idea, or because they don't necessarily understand the benefits yet of what it can do. Is that sort of paradigm, that spectrum between investment and seeing value from that investment. And as we all know, a large portion of data science is R&D. It's developing ideas, it's developing models, developing algorithms, and a lot of it is, to a more or less degree, from the business side, a real leap of faith, building a team around something that I think it's fair to say doesn't necessarily have a huge amount of immediate tangible value, but on some of the areas that they're working on. So how do you see that relationship playing out in a kind of real world commercial context between R&D and actually demonstrating real value for the business? How do you balance those two things?
So I guess one thing that comes to my mind is that you just need to start, and the sooner you start, the better, because that's how you create successful businesses. The businesses that have invested in research and development, and that are anticipating that future is going to be slightly different. and you really need to research that, because you don't want to apply solutions that are not completely trustworthy. So you need to spend a lot of time making sure that this actually works. And it's not just that it works now, but it's also creating the whole infrastructure and the whole environment, and the whole culture in the company as well, that appreciates that and looks forward to being part of it. And every technology goes through certain stages of development, right, before it gets widely adopted. So we need to be very careful to research this space of AI and machine learning, and then slowly and steadily build certain custom solutions suited for the problems, which then later on can be productionalized and eventually become a commodity, something that's it's available everywhere and for everyone. But it really needs to go through all the stages. And the other thing is related to testing and understanding the solutions that you might want to use, because it's easy to get a product from someone, implement it in a business model, and then realize actually it's not working. But if you're able to research that and understand what's going on, you might as well be able to move the needle, whether the company is able to become successful in the future, keep being successful and keep being a leader. I mean, that's my personal opinion, but I think it's never enough research. But then again, it comes from a kid that likes encyclopedia, so maybe it's slightly different. But sometimes I think about it in a slightly different way as well. So even if we are able to advance certain fields just a little bit and contribute with our ideas or the way that the results of our research, and then someone else picks it up later on and they carry on with this research, and then another group of researchers take it and they further advance something, and then there's a completely different person on the other side of the world that actually turns it into a product. I mean, it is a success because we slightly contributed to making things better and to solving our problem as well, even if we have to pay for someone else's product, right? But there's this whole chain, and I mean, I don't want to dwell into details into the philosophy of science and how it impacts the business and how it's interrelated and what things can happen. But I always think that the more research, the better, and the widely adopted it gets, and the widely understood it gets, the better. It's like, we can't really underestimate the value of I mean, I realize that I'm deviating a little bit, but the value of the periodic table of elements, right? I mean, it has changed chemistry substantially. And very often it's attributed to Mendeley, of course. He's done a lot of work on it, but you may not realize that there was John Newlands who actually created it earlier, I think 20 years earlier. But he made this point of periodic elements being like octaves in music, and then all the experts in chemistry said, well, how can chemistry to music? And they refused to publish his research, but it got later picked up by other people, and we sort of got periodic table of elements, but a bit later. So you see, we can't really underestimate the value that there is in researching things, publishing things, sharing ideas, and coming up with solutions that are derived from R&D.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think that's how evolution and progress is made in all fields, isn't it? It's and you kind of really see it now, actually, with the rise of sort of taking that idea and extrapolating it out to technology in general. The rise of the open source community, and how certainly languages like Python, which we focus quite heavily on, have had just such meteoric rises, because the open source community does rely on everybody doing their bit, sharing, publishing, everybody coming together, tweaking it, and I suppose that's a classic example of how that concept you just mentioned there definitely rings true.
Absolutely, and there I believe that there should be more transparency as well. So when you think about BERT, which is one of the leading language models now, and how open it is and how other people can actually use it, reuse it, and repurpose it by fine tuning it. It just shows that we can make collective progress, right?
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. I guess it's always that balancing act, isn't it, between collaboration and solving problems and competition in the corporate world as well, especially in law firms, which I'm sure is probably a fiercely competitive world as well. And obviously, like we said, seeing investment, return on investment from a business point of view as well. It's always that interesting balance. But no, you definitely raised some really interesting points there. And I guess you obviously are somebody that's come into the data science world from, let's say, you've done multiple masters, you've done econometrics, you've entered into the world and you've come with a broad skill set, I guess, and seen a lot of things and brought a lot of experience to the table. Do you see any kind of interesting crossovers or parallels taking place between some of the innovation and breakthroughs that are taking place within the legal sector? Do you see any of those that have major implications or kind of major effects for other industries or other sectors out there?
Yeah, so I think that the legal sector is actually quite related to project management to some sense, because if you treat legal cases as separate projects, all of a sudden you have a project team, you have a project goal, you're working with a client. So there are a lot of similarities for sure. And just because legal professionals are kind of similar, in my opinion, to medical practitioners, you see how those two fields are maybe seem to be co-evolving. So you have a lot of smaller practices, both in healthcare sector and in legal sector, and you also have some larger companies making an impact. So there's a lot of things that can actually a lot of synergies that can be found in that. One thing that I really like about litigation specifically sector is this uniform task-based management system, which is a framework for having structure of stages in litigation proceedings. And I see it as something that just simplifies the understanding of the work that's being done. And I'd like to see it in other industries as well. So to make things slightly more clear, the idea is that you have a standardized set of phases or when you're running, when you're managing a litigation matter, and it simplifies the understanding of what's going on and which stage we are at, and it also simplifies and standardizes the expenses. It's something that's been introduced in the US and widely used by American Bar Association, and it's also been adopted in England and Wales as J-code. So having this sort of framework, I think, is extremely beneficial, and would be extremely beneficial to all the other projects. So anything that you do when you need to report time or when you need to understand what's the life cycle of the project that you're working on would be just improved by finding this sort of crossover.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm always interested to hear of kind of frameworks which overlap with other areas, because there was always that balance, I guess, between or that viewpoint of data science and where it converges with software engineering. And clearly you've got approaches like agile within the software engineering world, and what parts of those actually lend to data science initiatives and data science projects. But are there any other methodologies which you employ personally when it comes to executing a data science project that you can share?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a big fan of CRISP. It's this cross-industry standard process for data mining, and I really like how it frames. I think it was developed by IBM, if I remember well. And it really nicely frames all the stages that you need to go through when you're developing a solution. The only thing that I would probably change in there is just add human in the loop and put human at the very center of it. So as you very well know, when you're going through all these stages within CRISP, you need to spend some time on business understanding and data understanding, and then make sure that you probably scope the problem. And then you proceed to data preparation, data pre-processing, and you do modeling. You make sure that it all works, that it serves the purpose. You evaluate it, and then you either deploy it or go back to business understanding, and then continue with another iteration by making sure that you really know what problem you're solving. And by having this human in the loop, you're making sure that there is integrity in the data. You may find some insights that will further improve your business understanding and data understanding. And you're also having human in control sort of the output of what's going on. So especially when we're working with those AI technologies, we want to make sure that human is able to sanity check, even though it's the best model ever and it performs great on the data set that we have at hand. We still need to proceed with evaluation. It doesn't always need to be manual. It can be just monitoring data drift and further evaluating the model that's been created to make sure that this engine is actually serving the purpose.
Yes, I guess always that piece of human input at the right stage is key, isn't it? And having the like I say, that evaluation process is key for any data initiative, I guess, to be successful. But I mean, on that note, when it comes to actually working alongside other quality data scientists and selecting data scientists to join the team, do you feel, are there any particular traits or characteristics that you feel are core threads that run throughout great data scientists? Is there anything that you can share from your experiences around that?
I mean, the typical things are, being analytical, understanding quantitative concepts. It helps if you're good at coding, obviously. You don't have to be the best, but you need to be eager to learn, because coding practices also change, and new libraries available, and you just want to make sure that you are willing to learn. It's the one thing that I particularly find important is being able to properly scope the problems, because if you scope the problem properly, you nearly found the solution, right? And it helps if you're working with someone that constantly asks the question why things happen that way, or why is the practice that way, why do we do things in this particular way. Because it enhances the understanding, and actually on both sides, and it can open someone's eyes on the problem that we didn't know existed. I think that there also needs to be some sort of balance when it comes to experience, and it helps to have data scientists who have some industrial experience, but also if you have other people who have absolutely no clue what the industry is about, be it law, finance, or healthcare, or whatever, you just know that someone is eager to find the solution to a certain problem, because very often these people will find a solution to a problem that we thought was impossible to solve, because they just no one briefed them that it's impossible and they shouldn't spend their time working on it. So I think that's important. I've actually seen it in financial industry and in some hedge funds when they create this team of amazing data scientists, physicists, mathematicians, and they just give them the market data, and they tell them to not ask any questions about how markets work, how the economy operates. Just look for patterns and trends, and try to focus on data. And I mean, I gotta say, they've been quite successful in this approach as well. But I still think that some sort of having this mix of people who actually understand the sector as well, and our data scientists, is extremely, extremely helpful.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, for my 2 pennies worth on the point of trends or traits that I see in some of the best data scientists we've worked with. Feedback has always been curiosity as a trait. Someone that's just naturally curious. And I think it's a great point that you make there about often if people come into an industry or a job without prior domain or sector experience, it's seen as a negative thing. But like you said, very often actually some of the best teams are naturally diverse by the fact that everyone does have a different perspective and they're looking at the same problem from a different angle. And sometimes without that prior knowledge, like you say, you just sort of treat the problem at face value. Very often that fresh perspective brings breakthroughs and innovation that you just probably wouldn't have got if you create cookie cutter teams of everybody in exactly the same blueprint, exactly the same template. So I definitely would agree with that. I guess just lastly, in terms of again, another question I'm always keen to ask people like yourself in leadership roles within data science, when it comes to you as a data scientist, I'm sure pretty as much as anybody would be au fait and bought into the concept of what data science can do for the business. But as with any kind of introduction of technology or digital transformation or whatever it may be, there's always a big exercise involved in winning hearts and minds and communicating this to people, stakeholders and people outside of the immediate data science team, and really the support of the wider business units and different stakeholders is really quite key in actually ensuring success for a data science function. But what sort of wider business factors do you feel are most important to consider to ensure the success of a data science function within a business?
I mean, like you said, I think support from the business, from the leadership of the business is essential. You need to understand what sort of problems you're working on and how you intend to solve them. But they also need to be willing to spend time and sacrifice their time to support you while you're solving these problems. Because very often you need a lot of time. You need a lot of time to spend with them, so they need to be patient and accepted as well. One example that comes to my mind is working on the data sets, right? We all know that models are only as good as the data that we use to train them. But you need to have a lot of commitment from the whole organization to be able to create those data sets. We at Mishcon are actually working on creating those public benchmarks and public data sets so that we can further enhance natural language understanding, not only on the tasks that are purely research driven, but actually the ones that are relevant to business and business operations and to businesses in general. So I think it's really important to have this support and to have this culture in the organization where everyone's willingness to help and support these efforts and these journey. It really helps if the organization is forward looking, which I can vouch for, and to have clearly defined strategy for the future. So I guess these are the key things, but obviously you need to also have support at each stage within the organization, because after all, you're working on problems that support the people that work in this organization. So they need to be supported in finding the use cases and coming to you and saying, actually, well, I have this problem. Is there any way to automate it? And then you can say, well, cool, let's try to fix it, let's solve it. But you need to have this sort of idea generation coming from both sides, actually.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I totally agree. Well, I've really enjoyed the chat, Kamil. I think it's been fascinating talking to you. You've shared some real value and real perspective that certainly got the hamster turning in the wheel for me and things that I hadn't thought of before. And I guess, nothing kind of remains but to say thank you very much for coming on and talking with us today. Really grateful for you to make an appearance, and look forward to hearing about the latest innovations that come out of Mishcon De Reya, revolutionising the legal tech world for years to come.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to, well, maybe meeting one day in a pub when things go.
Oh, wouldn't that be nice, eh? Hopefully not too long. I'll see you there.
Right, thank you.
Yeah, man. All right. Cheers, Kamil. Take care. Bye for now.
Bye.